Oh, hey, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is our regular time, our new and
New regular
improved old regular time of, gosh, which one am I on now?
Friday.
This is our marketing happy hour. I just finished with another one a little while ago and a Zoom call in between. So I am Dr. Christopher Vogelmann with Maximize Your Media, as well as Life Beyond Practice, which is our coaching group for doctors who want more free time, freedom, and fun with their own online business. And with me, as always, is...
I'm John Paduchak with johnpaduchak.com. Targeted Night Solutions is our digital agency where we help people with live video in general. Getting started with video.
Speaking of video, we're talking, today's topic is branding.
Branding. One of my favorite.
You recognize this brand?
I do.
El Presidente.
Indeed it is.
So we're going to talk a little bit about branding today because people have this notion within our circles in internet marketing and business consulting that branding just means, oh yeah, I got branding. I got a logo.
I know. It's very true.
So is that enough?
I think it's not nearly enough. No.
Not nearly.
No, not nearly enough. I actually thought of something funny today because I showed you, because it's Friday and, marketing happy hour. I've got I kind of like their branding.
Is that your favorite brand?
What is that? Yeah, Barnyard Pimp. It's called.
It's called what?
Barnyard Pimp.
God, yeah, you did say pimp. I thought it was Barnyard Pilsner.
It is Barnyard Pimp Pilsner.
So their brand is Barnyard Pimp
Pilsner, yes. And what's funny is I've been looking at a lot of these kind of brands because we're in a big craft brewing area where I live.
We are.
Yeah, I'm sure. Everybody seems to be right now. and we went out this last weekend on our last trip of the season. And this particular place that we stayed at, they have all kinds of craft beers, and they just put in a cidery. And I loved some of the labeling, and I forgot to bring the other ones with me. But
you even take photos with you? Didn't bring anything?
I could have, but I didn't today. I'll have to do another Friday. I'll bring them along. I'll save the cans.
Mercy.
Yeah, this is pretty cool.
I just realized in StreamYard we don't see our group participants when it comes to comments, so I'm heading over there. That's the one flaw of StreamYard. I think someday maybe they'll
I'm sure they'll straighten it out.
Get us groups.
Yeah. Wow. Can't have everything.
But it's interesting. I'm still trying to figure out the branding on StreamYard. What's that duck all about?
I don't know.
Do you have any clue? No.
No idea.
We'll have to. That'll be part of our topic for next week, which will be next week will be at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because we're pushing our clocks back an hour this coming, I guess it's early Sunday morning.
All the better reason to move to Arizona.
Well, yeah, or Hawaii. Hawaii, because Hawaiian Standard Time's been going on the whole time. They've never changed. So
I know. I think we could have a discussion about daylight savings time. Is it
aloha?
Or I think
we could have a discussion on daylight savings time. It's kind of like bad branding.
It is.
In my opinion.
It is kind of really. No, I agree.
I think they'd have to do a lot. It revolves mostly around the agricultural age, when they wanted more time in the evening to harvest the crops.
Yes.
And I don't know, there's a whole lot of harvesting going on in most metropolitan areas these days, unless maybe you have a roof garden, but you still don't even need that because you probably have electric lights.
And we all have great lights on our vehicles and everything else these days. So, as I said, I just wonder if it's a concept past its time.
Well, did Ben Franklin was the one who gave us daylight savings time, I think, wasn't it? Or was his idea? I don't think he gave it to us that early.
Maybe. I don't think it came up that early.
Hey, so talking about branding, we looked at logos. This is some good branding too.
Of course.
Flags make great brands in and of themselves as representatives of nations and nations' values and other things like that. We, for a while, actually did some branding when I was in the e-commerce space. We sold bike lights and flashlights and things like that. And we, through one of our branding friends, came up with the idea for a flashlight, which was perfectly vivid.
Oh, that's
I kind of
cool.
like I kind of like it. The whole idea was, going through the window, and the only thing I didn't like about our brand was it was a little bit like Microsoft Windows. So
Mm.
because we had the windows, but it was perfect, and it was perfectly vivid. Sorry, I have to turn off my phone. I forgot to do that. That's what happens when you're live.
I know.
These
With
things
them,
kind of go.
with them,
We're
I
all
agree
fans.
with that.
We're all fans of the whole Apple brand. I don't know if you can actually see that on the phone. Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
That's become sort of an iconic brand. I remember the good old days when the Apple logo was. There you go. Yours is easier to see.
yeah, I got to get in
Um,
there. It's
I
highlighted.
the funny thing is that I remember the old Apple logo was it was a rainbow on the Apple logo. In fact, I still have my Newton, which is no
Mhm.
longer an Apple PDA. I mean, it does function, but it's rather clunky. And even iPhones and other things were brands. But one of the things about brands, the main thing about a brand is the messaging. And I was going to check out one of my pieces of content that I give to our brand clients. And one of the things that we start out with is looking at brand values. And so the values that you have as an individual, actually your personal values, hopefully are going to carry over into your personal brand, of course, but also into your business brand. And some of the things that we often consider is when are you happiest? When are you happiest? What makes you feel the most accomplished? What do you really enjoy? What feelings do you tend to avoid? That's part of your brand. And what are the characteristics that you look for in new friends? Because that's going to carry over into what you look at in the characteristics of new customers or new
Sure.
clients. So the personal and the professional really are intertwined when it comes to branding. And I would imagine that a lot of Steve Jobs' personal values probably carried over into Apple
I would think so.
in terms of the degree of excellence. Sort of, well, he wasn't a very friendly CEO, but there was the accessibility, the user experience, things like that. Because I think to a great extent he was obsessed with design, and that carried over into Johnny Ives and all those super beautiful curves and finishes and making things as compact and as easy to use as possible.
There's a lot of
Another,
that with other brands too these days.
yeah, I mean, all brands.
Design
Yep.
yeah,
They all strive for that. And then in terms of, we look at values when we're thinking about brands, you want to look at also your professional values. Like for example, perhaps what's the one element that you care the most about when it comes to developing your business? And you're going through some rebranding too, as a matter of
I
fact.
am going through a lot of rebranding.
And it's more than a logo. You have to agree.
Way more than the logo.
Way more than a logo. So
Way more than the logo.
So in brand messaging, the other things I was looking at when I was doing my rebranding recently too, which is about to be released in January, what are the things that you want your business to be known for? So for me, I want to have that degree of excellence and professionalism, but I also want it to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
So much so that I was toying with the idea of naming my podcast the Dr. Fun Show. It may not turn out to be that way, but I mean, at least, I've been brainstorming different types of ideas. And then the question is, another question is, what are the qualities that you look for in people with whom you collaborate? That will influence your brand too,
Sure.
because your brand is either going to attract people who like your brand messaging, or it's going to repel them. And as our friend Rich Sheffrin says, it's not a bad thing to repel people with your brand and brand messaging.
Exactly. If they're the wrong people, for sure.
Yeah, you never want to attract the wrong people. And we asked about the themes and things like that. So eventually what you want to do is you want to distill by providing the answers to a whole series of questions, come up with maybe your I usually say top 5 brand values. And eventually we're going to kind of make them compete against each other until you can distill it down to maybe your top 2 or top 3 brand values. So for me, I would one of the brand values that I had was being extraordinarily helpful, having a degree of excellence,
Yeah.
and I kind of shied away from some of the values of things like that you might see in an Apple, which is elegance does not describe the brand that I'm trying to create in any way, shape, or form.
Me neither.
Yeah. And so what would be some of the brand values that you would have for what you're going to be putting together for your own launch?
Certainly simplicity.
Simplicity. I like that.
Simplicity is a good value to have these
Yeah.
days. I want people that are going to really understand video and the kind of get it.
Get it like they value it, or get it.
They value that. Yeah.
Right.
So that's certainly going to be a big thing. I mean, those are the two big ones that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. I think so. So after we go with values, one of the things that I often advise clients to do is then we present them with what we would refer to as the tone words, the words, and you may use these words in your brand messaging. Of course, you'll use it in the messaging, but it may even become part of what your tagline is all about. I'll just give you a couple examples of what I've used recently. Like your tone words are things like alive or adventurous, approachable. I think that would be a good one for you, is approachable. Airy, artistic, bohemian. Nah, my mom would have been bohemian.
Yeah.
Breezy, bright, calm, casual, chic. Like casual versus chic. I mean, some people have chic or casual chic, but that's a whole thing. Like for the fashion industry, if you will. Classic, clean, comfortable, confident is one that I like. Cool, cozy, creative, energetic, ethereal, feminine. No, I'm not going to put that into my brand, but I might put fresh or fun or friendly, some of my favorite F words. Focused. I think it's good to be focused. I think that you can have clarity in your brand. Maybe that's one of the words that you want to use to help people clarify. Yeah. Genuine, glamorous, just a few of these things. Happy. Do you want to have a happy brand? Do you want to be known as innovative or intellectual? Irreverent. It's probably closer to one of my tone words. Irreverent. Genuine. If you're an Etsy person, probably handcrafted. If you're interested in misfit vegetables, organic might be one of the things you have. Outdoorsy, if you're into the RV world. Polished, maybe you want powerful to be part of that. And there's just a whole host of words, even radiant or rebellious, or maybe you want a brand that exudes this notion of being rich. But that whole process of coming down to these things, I mean, you don't have to be sophisticated necessarily to be helpful and clean and simplified, because sometimes sophisticated is more complex. So all of these words, like one of my friends has her brand, her actual company name was used to be Made Vibrant. So that brand in and of itself tells you that there's creation involved, and it's just going to be bursting with colors. So the words that you choose to name your company actually are probably more important than, I would say, the logo or the images that you use to convey that message.
If you get the two together right.
Yeah, and it's very important to get the two together right. But your brand messaging, you're going to create your messages, you're going to craft your emails, you're going to all of your copy on the web, your social posts and other things are going to reflect your brand. And even just your personality is going to be reflected in your professional brand. Well, and then that's one of the dichotomies that we see all the time, is the conflict between your personal brand and your professional brand and how to harmonize them. So what would you suggest for people who want to harmonize the professional and the personal?
That's a good question. I think you just really kind of have to find a common ground between the two. You just have to find those things that that correlate between both places. Because I know we all kind of are challenged by that a little bit. And some people go out and they brand themselves personally, and professionally, and then there's kind of the in between. So more and more people I see are doing both.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I know that I've had a couple of chiropractic doctors over the years with whom I've purchased things. I've purchased things from them as well as consulted with them. And it's interesting to see. There was one gentleman, Piscatano, I think it is, Maurice, Dr. Maurice, and he had created something called the Pro Adjuster, which was an adjusting instrument for the spine that was automated to a certain extent. It gave you readouts of precisely which segments in the spine were stuck and which need to be released. And so, but he was more famous as Dr. Piscatano. And so I saw what happened to him is that he changed it, the whole branding, such that it was no longer a Pro Adjuster because he's trying to reach more doctors. It was Dr. Piscatano's Pro Adjuster. And so he actually had the two brands combined into one. Yeah. So if I were to do that, and I was known more for, let's say, I mentioned earlier Life Beyond Practice. Well, that thing's going to be rebranded, but it would be Dr. Vogelmann's Life Beyond Practice, because more people know me as Dr. V than they necessarily know me as Christopher Vogelmann, or they don't know me as the Life Beyond Practice guy. Mm-hmm. Now, our friend Lindsay Anderson, she branded herself at one point, and she created a book called The Click Technique, and she had her name presented professionally as One Click Lindsay. But at the beginning of this year, pre-COVID, she rebranded herself as her real name, Lindsay Anderson, and created her group as Build and Monetize University for the general group who would be funneled into a more narrow brand, which was Build and Monetize Masters, which was her private coaching group for which you paid a significant amount on a monthly basis for the one-on-one feedback. So that's a good example of branding and rebranding. And if you ever want to check her out, she's on a launch right now for the Launch Circle, which is a membership that both John and I have been in. And I'm pitching her right now because not son of a pitch, but I'm pitching her because her branding advice has really been invaluable, at least for me. Yeah, she's good. She's a good egg. Yeah. So, mm-hmm. Yeah, so shout out to you, Lindsay Anderson. When it comes to branding, it's very interesting because we've seen these transformations. Like, if you're a Tony Robbins or a Brendan Burchard or some of these high-level self-development, self-improvement coaches, they really have built a brand around their name. Yeah. And there is a school of thought now that says, and Lindsay talks about this too, which is take an active verb plus the result, and that would give you a good brand name for your particular program, not necessarily your whole business. So I look back at my Life Beyond Practice, which is kind of dying at this point. It's not resting in peace yet, but I'm thinking to myself, that was not necessarily the best name for it from the standpoint of using the formula active verb plus end result.
Well, we all go through this kind of evolutionary phase of we start out with something and then we kind of change directions a little bit as we go on, or we reinvent ourselves. So there's always kind of that constant reinvention of our brand, or some constant changes to it.
Yeah, it's constant and never-ending improvement. Who is it? It was Deming. Yeah. Deming, yeah, he went to Japan and preached the constant and never-ending improvement doctrine, which resulted in Toyota, Datsun, that then became Nissan, and everything else dominating the small car market across the world. Mm-hmm. So I lost my train of thought. Amtrak is a brand, by the way. They rebranded many, many years ago. And so you do see branding in a lot of different places. It's not just in the commercial area. We've seen an evolution even in governments of referring to their constituents as customers and changing many of those, their own interfaces. We saw health, education, and welfare years ago rebranding and reconstituting itself into HHS, or Health and Human Services.
Sure.
And so sometimes that becomes a little confusing. not unlike the large light that's on my forehead now. I wonder where that's coming from. I can't even tell where it's reflecting off of one of my speakers. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, now it's gone.
You never know over at your house.
Well, yeah, I prefer natural light. Right?
This is this.
There's all kinds of things happening. I mean, the sun angle has changed, so I don't look like I'm being scanned by an automatic checkout machine at Walmart. At least not today. That was in my earlier broadcast.
When you see a fighter plane projection onto your forehead one of these days.
Well, I've had shadows of fighter planes on me, but that's because we live just a stone's throw, from the Naval Air Station. As long as they don't have a lot of cargo planes taking off during our broadcast today, we will be okay. Those are the loudest, the fighters and the helicopters. Well, sometimes the helicopters.
And the good news is we never hear it. It's just you hear it.
Hey, think of branding with the various brands of services. Look at Space Force. So Space Force looks like they stole the logo from Star Trek and just modified it slightly.
They did.
That was pretty funny. But when it comes to branding, I think branding is just about everything. Every touch point of your business has to do with branding, even from how your your phone calls. So having been in healthcare practices for many, many years, the way your staff answers the phone is part of your branding. And I hearken, boy, there's a word I never use unless it's Christmas time and it's Hark the Herald Angels. Harkening back to my huge, actually it was a big chiropractic practice in Maryland. One of the things that I do remember is that I went through some branding too, which was I was, it was just Dr. Christopher S. Vogelmann, DC, or Dr. Christopher S. Vogelmann, chiropractor was my brand for the longest time. And then I went to a branding seminar in LA, of all places. Of course, I vowed that I would never live in California, and here I am. And they were talking about rebranding, and then what they changed my brand to was Vogelmann Back and Neck Pain Center, which I really felt was a little bit awkward, but I just uncovered a number of my branding things, and it was really interesting to see the evolution of just a bricks and mortar healthcare practice over the course of, say, 30 years. And then I changed that after I had to change locations. I changed it to Allegro Wellness because I wanted to move away from pain relief into wellness instead. And that brand bombed. I can tell you that for a fact, because I didn't have the appropriate messaging. And on top of it, most people didn't give a damn about wellness. What they really wanted was pain relief. In fact, I got one of my old coupons here. So talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, okay. I will do that. You know, my wife did a great job, I think, first run on her branding, because she called her business Compliments for Health, for complimentary health.
Like, you look marvelous.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, but exactly, complimentary health. And she's used it for the whole life of her practice, never really changed her branding. People love the name. It just kind of really fits with her style and what she does.
Well, there was complementary medicine, which was very big. That was a big phrase many, many years ago.
Very big.
I think you may be able to see this. Yeah, this is an old coupon. I think you can see this. I'm trying to put this up so that you can see this. This is, about the neck pain, back pain.
Yeah.
And then there's that young Studley gentleman right there.
Who's that guy?
Who's that guy? But it's really funny because I'm looking at it, and this was exactly what I saw, which was, it was Vogelmann Back and Neck Pain Center in Kensington, Maryland, not the Kensington part of London.
Sure.
And right on University Boulevard. In fact, I was right across from a major mall, and it was location for sure.
That's the gig.
It was funny because I was very reluctant to do anything, and it was in terms of mentioning where I graduated from, and it was at one time somebody put down the Yellow Pages got my my university wrong. They said I graduated from Howard University. So.
Howard. Yeah,
it's a traditional one of the traditional African American colleges.
That doesn't sound anything like Harvard.
Hey, what do you? Yeah, no, exactly. It was Howard. They gave me a discount on that ad, by the way, for screwing up my branding. But you may be wondering about my drink today. My drink is not nearly as nice as the Barnyard Pimp Pilsner, but I actually had my homemade Frappuccino, which is basically just iced coffee and cream, because I've been trying to cut down on my sugar again after my wife's birthday celebrations this past week. And I lost my train of thought again. I'm having another Amtrak moment today.
I'm trying to cut back a little bit, but the snow and we got our first unexpected snowstorm here today. So
I actually miss snow. I'm one of those weirdos. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, the Miami of the North,
snow,
the Paris of the Northeast.
I can't imagine not having 4 seasons.
Well, we have 4 seasons. It's just, it goes, like summer's hot.
Mm-hmm.
Fall is cool and a little less sunny. And winter is 60 degrees and frickin' freezing.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah.
So
it's all relative. Having come from Buffalo, I have totally wimped out now at this point. I don't think I could survive another winter in Buffalo, although I have been in minus 30 degrees in Russia many years ago. So.
I don't think I could survive winter in Buffalo. Winter.
They've gotten those winters have gotten warmer. So Buffalo, if you're rebranding, you can benefit by touting the wonderful effects of climate change and the lower amount of snowfall every year in the Western New York area.
Brutal in Buffalo.
It was never brutal. It was when it was windy with the wind whipping off of Lake Erie. That was brutal. I remember being in minus 65 wind chill one time during the blizzard of 77, trying to shovel the driveway. And after 20 minutes of this effort, I turned around and I looked, and everything that I had shoveled had filled in again. And then I went indoors and didn't come out again for another 3 days. So,
I know, those were the days.
Those were the days.
77, 78 here in New England.
Totally mega.
Moved along.
So when it comes to branding, it's very interesting. When do you think somebody should rebrand? It's always an interesting question.
I think when their message changes significantly.
Yeah.
Either their personal values have changed, or their business values have changed, or something major has changed about their message, or reinvention of the business. Because especially now, I think there's a lot of people looking at branding because we all went through COVID. Everybody's thinking about reinventing themselves and wondering how to do it, and they've taken and made adjustments as we've gone along through all this stuff. And I'm seeing a lot of people right now rebranding or changing direction or simplifying. There's a lot of that happening.
Even the naming of your products and programs, your coaching programs or digital products, or even the book titles will be reflected in the brand messaging that you're sending out. And even the simple thing when you start moving on into colors is that all colors have a certain meaning attached to them. I know this from, if you look at blue is considered sort of very reliable and stable. You'll notice that IBM, a lot of other Big Blue, for example, was a very stable company. Some people would argue stodgy, but they reinvented themselves several times. Even the little lines that you see on the IBM logo, they've changed in size and proportion over time.
Yeah, especially lately with all the stuff that they've done with Watson and cloud computing. They had a whole division of cloud computing. A lot of stuff happening with IBM. They're a good example.
Mm-hmm. And you see colors too, like orange. Mm-hmm. Think of, or even Amazon uses orange. Mm-hmm. Is it orange and black or orange and blue? I can't remember now. But there's a lot of orange that exists within there. You look at NFL teams, yellow is a very bright, vibrant color. And you see teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it's the only yellow and black team that I remember, other than if somebody comes up with an expansion team called the Sheboygan Bees.
Except for yellow and Green Bay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting how people choose these various colors, and people become when you're building your tribe, when you're building your own group of fans for your entrepreneurial efforts, your selection of colors is going to be very important. So for me, I've been working on building something that is very vibrant, is very reminiscent of life on an island, because I live on an island. And I really resonate a lot with sort of the Caribbean colors, the turquoises, the yellows and oranges and others.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I have to think of the messages that those convey. The blue gives you stability. The orange gives you a level of excitement. And no, I'm not trying to mimic the colors of Syracuse University. They're different tones, but I keep gravitating back to that orange and blue because they are complementary colors to each other.
Colors to another.
Yeah. And so there are some people who insist if they're going red, white, and blue, for example. You see that a lot in service companies. There's a lot of HVAC companies I've seen who do the red, white, and blue thing all the time. Except for one that there's a plumbing company here in the San Diego area. I want to say it's Anderson or something like that. And it's all hot pink because the owner is a woman. Very interesting. Their trucks stand out in traffic all the time with the hot pink letters that are there.
Like the Mary Kay years, when we saw the Cadillacs and everything.
Remarkably similar. So the issue, one of the issues is, what does your brand represent? What's the messaging that is conveyed? And as I said before, the logo is the last thing that you should even consider. We look for one of the clients that I'm working with currently. We are very concerned of just the font selection. Is it sans serif or serif? So serif fonts have the little tails and the little top hats that you would see in letters that would be more traditional, that you'd see in older print, for example, printing of books and newspapers and other things like that. Whereas the sans serif, they chop off all the little legs and tails and top hats. And yeah, we were moving back and forth between several different things. We looked at Red Hat Display and Railway and Montserrat, and we looked at Times New Roman because they wanted to go back to it. And then we went back to Helvetica, New Helvetica, and all these other things until we eventually settled on one font. And once we settled on the font, then we went to the actual image of the logo. And you really do need to consult with designers to kind of find out, because not all fonts work with all other fonts. Some things just don't look good together. It's like
very, very distinguishing. Like the other day, you and I were talking about Misfits and what a unique font they picked out for their for their boxes. It's almost like their font is their logo.
Yep. And in fact, word logos are very big. You can create an original font or a take on a font to just create purely a word logo. And I've seen with internet marketers, for example, like Frank Kern at one point just would have his name, and then he changed it into sort of this boxy format that you see a lot, which is you put your first name in one box and you put your second name in a different box, and then you divide it together. Or you would take your name and you would highlight it in a color and bold it, or just have the color for the first name and then a bold, black for the second name, and then run them together. A lot of people like to run names together. Like YouTube is just as one word, even though it's made up of two.
Sure.
And I think that symbol of the press play button, that red and white logo has been taken. It's a takeoff on so many other things. You'll see that used. That little press play button is seen in a lot of logos these days.
Yep. We were even looking at it for my logo.
Yeah. Yep. And I think over time, I think your thing is going to look pretty darn good
I think it'll be very cool when it gets done.
It's going to be very cool. Yeah. And you need to also consider, once you get into the logo world, of how it looks. And we do this in social posting all the time, both John and I, how it looks against dark backgrounds versus light backgrounds. Because when you start putting your logo into transparency, you may find that it doesn't look nearly as good as you thought it did. So you have to consider how your brand's going to look across all media. That's the thing. That's why we talk about, in our little business, we talk about, our agency talks about maximize your media. We focus mostly on social media. And sometimes clients just have logos that don't work. No. And they have to be redone, at the very least in transparencies, or look at a secondary logo. We played with a logo. Let me see if I've got. See, we have that little logo that we created for the marketing happy hour. I wonder if, can I show one that's up here? No. Gosh, you know what? It's crazy today doing the branding. StreamYard is very interesting because they have branding that, as we talked about before, I still don't quite understand the duck, but there's the duck. It might have been the barnyard and the StreamYard. We had done like, oh yeah, so we had Maximize Your Media. So Max is our secondary logo. It's just M with the @ symbol. And this is the one that we've worked towards trademarking as well as our word logo. And it becomes very interesting because we needed something smaller because we had a long word logo for Maximize Your Media. And we needed something smaller that we could actually put on to social posts. And that's how Max, we call it Max anyway. So that's it. It's sort of like the Sleep Number. It was Select Comfort was the original brand. Yeah. But everybody kept, when your customers keep referring to you as something else, it was transferred into the, from Select Comfort to, what was it? The number?
Sleep Number?
Sleep Number. What's your sleep number?
What's your sleep number?
So that's a consumer driven rebranding of something, which I thought was really kind of interesting.
True.
Consumer driven rebranding.
That makes sense because that's all anybody who has one of those beds is all they think about.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Sleep Number. And then there's a new feature that they're advertising under that, which is something that automatically will detect snoring and raise the bed of the offending snorer to minimize snoring.
It does help marginally.
Marginally, yeah. I mean, we sometimes have Snorefest 2020 here, which only makes the pandemic worse. But so when it comes to branding, I think the most important thing to remember is your brand messaging really comes from answering a long series of questions and taking the various answers and almost setting up I like to think of it as a tournament or a competition. The playoffs is what I call it, where you have a series. Let's say you have four values that you value, and you pit one against the other. So do you like this one? A better than B. Okay, you liked A better than B. A goes on to the next round.
Yeah.
Do you like C better than D? No, you like D better. So A and D are going to eventually compete. And this is it's a series of brainstorms. It's a series of asking lots of questions. And ultimately, the ability for you to create your brand message is going to depend on the quality of the questions that you ask, distilling your values, distilling your likes. And often it's important to just focus on the things you really don't like and make sure that those are never part of your brand messaging.
And that's true of a lot of stuff that we do. It comes down to a big competition of sorts and determining what's most important.
And your priorities. I mean, if you want to attract a certain type of customer or client or patient for that matter, you want to have people who will at least resonate with you a little bit. And your brand should be a reflection of this. And this is why when I had the back and neck pain center,
right,
I'll tell you, it did resonate with a lot of people because you can tell this coupon actually has holes punched in it. So this coupon was actually used by somebody. I have no idea how I wound up transporting this to California, but it's just a blast from the past of branding. And I think, when you're a professional, and the reason I did some changing of branding, I can reflect back on it, to Allegro Wellness. It could have been Allegro Pain Relief Center. That might have been the best one of all for fast pain relief. Allegro was just because those were my favorite pieces when I was playing French horn in orchestras many years ago. It's also a good brand of coffee, by the way, that you'll find at your local Whole Foods. Mm-hmm. But it was a case in which I had the personal brand, which was me as a solo practitioner. But I was looking at one point to bring on an associate doctor. And one of the things I remember from practice management groups years ago when it came to branding was try not to name your business after yourself, right, particularly if you want to sell it later on. So, yeah, I realized that nobody really wanted to necessarily buy the Vogelmann Chiropractic Clinic or Vogelmann back pain and, pain and back and Neck Pain Center. That was a mouthful. They really didn't want to buy that with my name attached. And so what I wanted to do was create a larger brand that would be an umbrella where I could bring in an associate doctor and give that doctor actually profit sharing, a piece of that actual professional liability corporation, and eventually groom that person to buy the practice.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the most important things to think about. It's not. I think about electric cars. You're not thinking about the Elon Musk car company. You're thinking about Tesla.
Tesla.
So he named Tesla after Nikola Tesla, who was brilliant inventor. But you're not buying a Musk when you're out there. You are buying a Ford because Henry Ford wanted it to be his name. And Chevrolet was French, I think.
Sounds
if I'm not mistaken. Mercedes was the daughter of was it Auto Diesel, or was it of Benz? Yeah. Anyway, but Mercedes was the daughter, and so the car company was named after the daughter, and Edsel was named after Edsel himself. Packards were named after. So most of the time in the early stages, particularly in the late 19th century, early 20th century, a lot of those companies were named after the owner.
Yeah.
But Standard Oil was named Standard Oil. I think it was that who was Standard Oil?
Rockefeller.
Yeah, Rockefeller. John David Rockefeller. He didn't name it the Rockefeller Oil Company. He called it Standard Oil. And I think so. You see a lot of examples of just the naming of companies and how we go through various trends and we phase in from one to the other.
Yeah.
NCR was the National Cash Register Company until such time as cash registers were no longer in vogue. And then it just became NCR. International Business Machines became IBM. And so there's a tendency towards shortening. You look at Price in the consulting world, you look at Price Waterhouse Cooper, they've just become PwC.
Yeah, and then you see a lot more sub-brands and trademarks too than we used to see in the past.
Yeah, some brands are very interesting. I mean, Procter and Gamble were names of people, and then they formed a company, but then it's pretty much known as P&G.
Pretty much.
So when you're looking at creating a brand, it's a lot more than just slapping on a logo. You could go to 99 Designs, you could go to Logo Nerds, you could go to any number of other places, but you really need to do some thinking and some brainstorming of the type of customer your brand message is going to attract.
Yes.
And, for me, I like to work with people who have a certain amount of energy and enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to go with a brand message that is totally, like a top 100 law firm, for example. I'm not going to go with the idea of having the name of the partners inside of it and simply having a word logo, because it's not going to work for me.
No. Want some fun.
So what are the things that resonate with you when you look at logos and things like that?
Obviously it's got to be correlated to what the business is. So, but I like things that are kind of unique, stylish, simple, I would say. I tend to like a lot of the more simple logos.
So I actually think that our marketing happy hour logo would be too complex for you.
Not necessarily, but
no, not necessarily. Okay.
It has meaning though, which is the one thing that's good about our marketing happy hour logo.
which by the way is easier to. It's a lot easier to see if I do this and take it off the screen. So you can see we have the phone, we have the megaphone, and we have the drink, and we have the words itself. So, but our beverages have been pretty tame lately. That's all I can say.
Well, for you maybe.
It's a cold, hard New Hampshire winter.
Bottoms up, baby.
Bottoms up.
It is. Yeah, it was a really, really surprised. I wasn't expecting snow this year.
I just realized something subconscious that has occurred to me over the.
You just muted yourself somehow.
It's interesting.
Going along, and all of a sudden,
that was really strange. I don't know how that actually happened because I put my hand came down. I think it may actually hit a key on the keyboard because I was nowhere near the trackpad to do that. But sort of post pandemic, I've been getting a lot of ester C and the health thing, but this has the same colors that I like for my new branding, which is the orange, the turquoise, and the dark blue.
Yeah, I like the blue. I like turquoise. I like red. I think it stands out.
Red is good. Red is a very exciting color.
It is.
And I've seen, I'm harkening back to the Herald Angels. So our friend Lindsay, she does the Build and Monetize University. And so she has red and black is her consistent color scheme throughout all of the courses that she releases too. They always have the same look and feel. And I think that now that she's had about, I want to say she's got 10 months of that brand under her belt, people are used to seeing that, particularly when she releases a new course, they immediately resonate with it. But there's a lot of repetition. There's tens of thousands of dollars of ad spend behind that familiarity.
Right.
And, but then when she moved into the coaching group, she changed the color from red to green. I thought that was really interesting because she really had a word logo essentially, which was build and monetize. Very interesting. But that shows you two very active words, two active verbs to build businesses for. It used to be coaches and consultants, but she found that the brand messaging didn't work so well for consultants because it was a totally different crowd. And then so she focused in on the coaches, and that became her thing now. She's a coach to coaches. So
there's a lot of them around.
There's a lot of them around, but there are very few really good ones around.
That's right.
So, and your thing is primarily in the training people to do live video. So it just makes sense that, even the on-air sign that you see in television, you always see the red letters on air, and the camera that you look into is the red light. So whenever when they have 3 or 4 cameras, you always look for the one. Here on the MacBook, I look for the green light. Green means go.
Look for the white lights. The
white light, don't go into the light.
Don't go into the light.
No matter how bad your broadcast may be.
That's right.
Don't go into the light. So I'm checking comments here today. I missed a couple of comments. I can't believe it. Huh? I think it could be also because we've changed our time. Yeah.
It could be.
And people are pretty busy with Halloween. Tonight, I remember, was branded as Beggars Night. And we used to go out into the local neighborhoods on Beggars Night. Because it was something about, if you were extra poor, you went out the night before so you could get extra candy. But in the church that I belonged to, the First Presbyterian Church back in Buffalo, that was right next to the Symphony Hall, we used to go out and we would trick or treat for UNICEF on the night of the 30th. And we would actually have a little milk carton with a slot there, a little hole in the top. And we would actually collect pennies and nickels and things, mostly full of pennies, on October 30th. So that is pretty interesting. And UNICEF itself has had some very interesting branding being part of the United Nations. I mean, UNICEF, nonprofits go through a lot of branding, and sometimes they're the ones who need the biggest help when it comes to branding themselves.
Yeah, because sometimes they really get off kilter.
Or even rebranding. Like, think of United Way and all the scandals of several years ago. They had to do a lot of brand messaging and fine tuning to get people to donate again to the United Way, which basically funded a whole host of different charities. And we were used to seeing that thermometer was almost indicative of the United Way, as it would get higher and higher and higher as they reached their funding goal.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a couple people that did kind of some goofy things with branding. I know I've seen some. I can't think of a good example now.
I can think of one example, which is New Coke versus original Coke.
That was one.
A big branding failure.
One that I saw the other day that was kind of odd to me, or felt odd to me, is our gas utility company rebranded. and they rebranded. It's still called Liberty. They went from Liberty Utilities to Liberty, and it's got a heart that looks like it's radiating out, which was, to me, a little weird.
Yeah, we had some interesting rebranding.
They care.
The electric company in Buffalo used to be known as Niagara Mohawk.
Yeah.
And it eventually was absorbed by some others, and eventually they changed their name around, and it became National Grid.
Yes.
Which wasn't nearly as fun as Niagara Mohawk. No. I remember the very first airplane I ever flew on when I was I think I was 5 years old. I still vividly remember the airplane because it was my first trip.
Sure.
And you always remember your first. And it was Mohawk Airlines. Mohawk. And you had this, this chief, this Mohawk with the Mohawk on the tail of the airplane as we made our way to LaGuardia Airport. And eventually we went on to Pan American Airways on Pan Am with that lovely logo. I used to love flying on Pan Am. We did that numerous times.
Yeah.
And neither of those airlines is around anymore. Mohawk, I think, was absorbed by U.S. Airways, which was eventually, it was U.S. Air, then U.S. Airways, and then it became absorbed by American.
Yeah.
But there was a time when U.S. Airways was gobbling up other airlines like Republic and PSA, Pacific Southwest Airlines, here on the West Coast, and a number of others. And every once in a while, when you're on a plane, for U.S. Airways at least, you would see one of the old logos of the previous airline that they had gobbled up.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah, there is a lot in airlines as they get switched around over the years.
Yeah, I mean, Virgin is an interesting brand in and of itself because Richard Branson created Virgin. It was records first. So it became Virgin Records, Virgin Air, Virgin this, Virgin that.
Cruises, they get all kinds of
cruises, yeah. And in fact, one of our friends is actually involved in designing the first of those cruise ships. Mega cruise ships in Genoa, Italy. Yeah.
Beautiful. Very nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's really funny too, because every once in a while you would see him partying with Richard Branson.
Sure. Why not? As long as he doesn't cut off his tie.
No, it's very funny.
That's
what was that? I'm sorry, I missed that one.
Do you remember in the Hangouts days when he was on, and people were like, Richard Branson doesn't like ties. And I remember Virgin did a huge Google Hangout presentation.
I missed that. I knew that he used to cut them.
Richard was on it. And
yeah.
The guy that was interviewing him, Richard puts his hand out. Somebody hands him a pair of scissors, and he proceeds to cut the guy's tie off. He said, "We don't believe."
I remember seeing numerous. I saw numerous videos of him actually cutting someone's tie, which is very interesting. So, if I were to look at a brand, see Virgin, you just look at the font that they use. The color is red, which is exciting. Plus the white, generally it's red and white. So red is just like vibrant excitement. And that really stands out. Although Virgin America, that airline has been absorbed by a U.S. carrier. I'm trying to remember who it is. I think it's, I don't remember, but everybody keeps absorbing everybody else. Same thing goes with banks. I mean, banking, you look at logos and things. I was looking at like TD Bank, which is the Canadian bank that came to the U.S. We just don't have it out here, but they have this this thing in their logo, which is gosh, I forget the term of it. It's contiguous. The T and the D kind of flow together, and you look at Bank of America. It's such a strange looking logo now. It is actually supposed to represent a farmer's field with the red and blue. So I don't know if you've seen it, but it just sort of curves. People think it's a flag, but it's actually supposed to represent a farmer's field.
A Bank of America check.
Bank of America.
So I just saw it today. Yes.
I've been doing a lot of research on things for more than one client over the last couple of weeks. It's been branding city, which is something I had not expected because my wheelhouse really is in social media, but it turns out over the many years of working with other brand experts that I absorbed a lot of information.
Yeah, we do become pretty good generalists over time with all the stuff that we
Well, yeah, and in fact, I think that getting educated in things like branding and social media and live video and all of these other things, it's a very good. Even if you never do all of it yourself and you hire somebody else to do it for you, like I've done with some of our SEO, some of the SEO that we do ourselves. Some of the SEO we farm out to other companies. But being educated in certain things enables you to be what Cy Sims, another company that's no longer in business, used to refer to as where an educated consumer is our best customer. I miss Cy.
Exactly. I know I do too. I love
I
Sims.
miss Cy Sims. I got a lot of clothing from
Me
Cy.
too. Me too.
I still have some stuff that's in great shape from shopping at Sims in Buffalo.
I believe I also do, now that I think about it.
It's pretty hilarious actually when you think about it. But see, isn't that interesting? So there's a brand message that is stuck into my head since the 70s.
Yeah.
And it's Sims, where an educated consumer is our best customer. But that's great. That's great brand messaging right there, because you had all of these really high-end brands that there was the excess amount. It would be the equivalent now, I guess, to a TJ Maxx or something like that, but mostly for men's clothing. There was some women's clothing there too. And you'd see these things even in the section like Givenchy, and you would see these haute couture type fashion items that were in the women's section, which would normally sell for thousands in Manhattan.
Yeah,
that were just extras. And the extra, it was really one of the early, I don't know, like almost like factory outlet.
Yeah, to me, it's almost more like a Marshalls, but it's
Marshalls. Wicked awesome.
Marshalls, but now TJ Maxx, and they own each other anyways.
Oh yeah, Ross, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, all the consolidation, and we see consolidation more and more in technology. You see companies like Facebook buying up WhatsApp. They'll buy Instagram. They buy all these others, but they're buying brands. And they have not changed. Instagram is still Instagram because it's a recognized brand. They changed the logo twice, actually, since that I recall.
Yeah.
But it's still Instagram, because if you were to call it Facebookagram or something, it wouldn't have that same cachet, the same cool factor for a younger audience.
Right.
And how just the word Instagram, it's an instant message that is conveyed to someone in the form of pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why that was part of the reason why I chose Instapatients for my product for doctors who want to get more patients through social media. But I wasn't looking so much as Instagram. I was looking more as sort of like instant results. But instant results take time. That's the irony behind it. There's not really instant gratification. You might get that dopamine or adrenaline rush having purchased the Instapatients, but that wears off when you realize that there's work that you have to do.
Some things work faster than others, but all things actually take a reasonable amount of time to be productive.
Yeah, and you're going to see that it's going to take you, if you want to do everything organically with extending your brand, creating your brand, doing the brand messaging and all that other stuff, you're going to have to spend a lot of time figuring out exactly what you want to say. Yeah. Or you can, as I've done in the past, I've hired people for $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 to give me a complete brand package.
Sure.
And sometimes it's just worth it, just hiring somebody who you can bounce ideas off of until such time as you think, they reflect back to you the words that you're using, and you're like, oh no, I really don't like that. So it's always good when you're doing branding to get some feedback from other people who you know, love, and trust, who are going to help to steer you in the right direction, which is why
we're talking
we can reflect back to you some of those things. So you should feel free to add your comments, send us your questions. You can private message us here, even on the Marketing Happy Hour, because we have our Zookbook Facebook page here. And we're welcoming those of you who are in the healthcare professions to come on over and join our Health Broadcasters group. We have the page, we also have the group, and you'll find it as Health Broadcasters Group on the Book of Faces.
Yes.
And if you would like to get some of our tips, tricks, and wisdom with respect to your own branding. And also, we'll be offering another special thing for those of you who give up your name and email. We'll be sending you something very special, some of our checklists and some of our best one-pagers, which will help you in your own marketing efforts.
Indeed.
But send your email privately to us. Don't post it in the group or on any of the pages, because those spammers are going to come up after you. But we'll be making a couple offers in the next couple of weeks, and I think you probably will want to willingly give up your email address. So
we were talking a lot about branding earlier today, because we were talking about display advertising.
Oh yeah,
and kind of what a boon to branding that is, because your brand is being seen all over places like Fox News and Wall Street Journal and Forbes, and
there's a degree of social proof. If you see your agency or if you see your practice, for example, up on WebMD, even though it's a banner ad, it gives you a little bit of a quasi third party endorsement. Even though they're not promoting you, but you're appearing as an ad on a well-respected site.
Exactly. So a whole other phase of branding that we didn't really
among other things.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, we're after the hour. Okay. So hopefully our future broadcasts, we're aiming for something around 25 minutes, something that's easier to consume. But we did, as always, have a conversation about marketing as opposed to having a course about marketing that we're delivering. But we will be delivering courses in the future. So.
Yes, plenty of them.
Plenty of courses. All right. And so with that, I would encourage you to come on back here again at 2:00 Pacific and 5:00 Eastern Standard Time. And to those of you in Hawaii, it's going to be noon, no longer 11 o'clock, because you are staying on Standard Time.
Lunchtime learning for you.
Lunchtime learning for you. Grab a sandwich and the device of your choice, as well as the drink of your choice. Anyway, it's Friday. You might imbibe a little on.
A couple at noon. You never know.
You might have, what was that? A Barnyard Pimp Ale. I don't know if they go that far into Honolulu. So
it's in Vermont.
It's Vermont.
Vermont.
So those of you folks in Burlington, Montpelier, Jericho, Vermont, where my cousin has his farm.
Real, bro.
Yeah, Jericho.
Queechy.
It's about 14 miles out of Burlington. I love Burlington, by the way, right on Lake Champlain.
I love all the places in Vermont. We've had such a great time.
So many great places.
It's fun. Burlington next year.
Burlington. Instead of next year in Jerusalem, it's next year in Burlington.
Yeah. Well, next summer, we can go camping again.
Yeah, when Lake Champlain hasn't frozen over.
Awesome. When Lake Champlain's thawed, we'll be good.
All right. So stay warm up there in New Hampshire, John. And I'm going to try and put on the fan and maybe the air conditioner because it's kind of hot here right now.
Lucky you. I'm going to go out and
sometimes. I do miss snow, though, as I've told you on more than one occasion. So
you love it today.
All right. I miss skiing. I know
all that
skating,
stuff,
all that good stuff, because that's my childhood was snow forts, snowmen, and epic snowball fights. So, Buffalo, the epic snowball fight capital of the world. They should use that as their brand message.
They should.
In the meantime, go Bills. Bye.
Yep. Bye for now.